Hello everyone and welcome back to more of the Fruit of Grisaia. In the last episode, we learned the horrifying truth of what has really been going on behind the scenes of the camp. Turns out that the captain and the teacher had been chopping up the bodies and feeding them to us, and it's gruesome and having wild uninhibited sex, and it's just the absolute worst parts of humanity has shown themselves. And because of that, Kazuki and I have decided to run away and escape the forest as best we can. As you can see, Captain is trying to chase us and kill us for what we've seen. This couldn't be. This had to be a dream. Why wasn't I waking up? This absolutely could not be real. As these thoughts swirled through my dazed mind, Kazuki hissed into my ear as if to slap me awake.
だから声を出すなと言ったのに失敗したわ。これでもうタガが外れた。殺し合いが始まるわよ。殺し合い。あの人たちをもう人間だと思わない方がいいわ。嘘だよ。こんなの、これは夢でしょ。現実逃避もいいけれど後にしてくれるかしら。グズグズして面倒になるようならここで捨てていくわよ。
I clung tightly to Kazuki like a little girl, terrified of being left behind by her mother. There was nothing to do but run. The things chasing us were now monsters, demons that feasted on human lives. If I were to succumb to the pull of madness and fall to the ground, my life would end. For now I could only clutch Kazuki's hand and run into the dark heart of the forest, where the light of the stars couldn't betray us. Suddenly Kazuki raised her hand and barked a command. As I came to a halt, something moved slightly in the corner of my eye. A black shadow slowly emerged as if oozing out of the darkness ahead.
やあ、こんな時間にどこへ行くんだい？
佐久間先輩、ここにいちゃダメです。坂下部長と先生が。
Halfway through my sentence, I noticed something odd about Sakuma's glassy gaze. Her eyes were focused on the rucksacks we were carrying, and her swollen face betrayed not surprise, but suspicion.
Amane, 逃げるのよ。その人はもうダメ。
Sakuma furrowed her brow at Kazuki's words.
そうか。見てしまったのか、二人とも。
佐久間先輩。
どうする？今戻れば、私が坂下にうまく説明してあげるけど。
先輩、何を言って。言ったはずよ、アマネ。鬼は連れていけない。もうこの人たちは人間の世界には戻れないのよ。嘘だ。そんなの嘘だ。アマネ。
Kazuki seized my backpack and practically forced me into a run.
左の灌木の中へ。
Honestly, I couldn't tell my left from my right at that moment, but as Kazuki's grip stayed firm and we plunged into a short thicket, pushing our way through the grasping branches toward escape. Sakuma didn't pursue us. Instead, she spoke a few words. Her voice was like a whisper, but somehow it found its way all too clearly to my ears.
残念だよ、スーを私は君のこと結構気に入っていたんだよ。
Sakuma-senpai had known? She had known what Sakashi and Oshi were doing. She had known what that meat was. She had known everything, and kept her silence.
ねえ、カズキ。何？質問なら後にしてちょうだい。今は急いで。佐久間先輩は知っていたの？カズキも気がついていたの？知らなかったのは私だけ。なんで教えてくれなかったの？知ったところで誰にも止められない。こうなるのは必然だったのよ。必然？いいやまね。ここにいるのはもう人間じゃない。動物よ。ライオンにシマウマが食べられるのは当たり前のこと。 そのことでシマウマは怒ったりしないし、泣くこともない。弱い者がいて、それを強い者が食べる。生き残るために食べる。それがルールなのよ。
But we're human beings. In order for people to live as human beings, 3 basic rules need to be respected. Don't steal, don't destroy, and don't kill. When even one collapses, when breaking it becomes natural, it's only a matter of time until the other 2 give way. And when it comes to that, no one can stop the downhill slide. When people fall below the absolute minimum standard of humanity, they revert to a simpler, more primitive set of rules. The strong eat the weak, the law of the jungle.
泣かないで、鬱陶しい。
Kazuki quickly held her hand against my mouth, but the unbelievably cruel reality was beyond my capacity to endure. It was far too sudden and far, far too strong a dose. I had to scream. If I didn't scream, the terror would tear me apart from the inside.
黙りなさい。
We'd been pushing our way past through the bushes and stands of trees to keep hidden from our pursuers, but there was no point if I was broadcasting our location. Kazuki pushed her hand firmly down, finally stifling my muffled shriek, and turned to face me. In the faint pre-dawn light, the whites of Kazuki's unblinking eyes stood out powerfully against her mud-stained face. It was the harsh glare of a father dragged out of bed by a bawling toddler. Staring back into those steady eyes, I drew clipped, trembling breath through my nose. In time, my cries faded against her palm.
いい子ね、アマネ。泣かなくていいのよ。約束したでしょ。あなたは必ず私が助けるから、何も心配はいらないの。わかる？
My throat was continuing to spasm convulsively, probably because I'd stopped crying so suddenly. But despite everything else, the feeling of Kazuki's hand squeezing mine tightly was genuinely reassuring. Kanada's voice rang out in the darkness. From the volume of her voice, she was no more than 20 or 30 meters away from the thicket we were crouched. I looked back to Kazuki's face and spoke in a whisper. She was.
鬼に飲み込まれたか、騙されているのか、脅されているのか。どのみちあの人ももう引き返せない。
The footsteps of the ghouls approached us from behind. If they caught us, would they kill us immediately or make us one of them? Even in the latter case, we wouldn't stay allies for very long. It was all too clear that these creatures would kill without a second thought to preserve their own lives. There were many feet stepping through the mud, many branches snapping in the darkness behind us. Engulfed in the madness that had spread from Ochi and Sakashita, the others had abandoned themselves to the final rule and become corpse eaters, demons. Reason and morality no longer had any meaning to them. In the end, nobody wants to die.
逃げるわよ。
We fought our way forward through the soft, slushy mulch of decayed leaves, desperately climbing the slope before us. My feet sank deeply into the muddy soil, my legs, trembling from malnutrition, tangled awkwardly with every stride. Our pursuers' eyes glistened in the darkness like pools of oil. Those eyes betrayed no hatred, no anger. They weren't the eyes of people looking at their enemy. They were the eyes of beasts, and they knew no emotion but hunger. They were looking at their prey. If they catch us, they were going to eat us on the spot. The terror paralyzed my brain and even focused. The slope would have been difficult to climb. My leg caught in a muddy patch of leaves and I tumbled down onto the ground.
Amane, 立って、お願いだから。もういいよ、カズキ。一人で逃げて。私はもう無理。怖くて動けない。
My hand shaking pathetically, I lowered my rucksack to the ground, then took out a kitchen knife carefully wrapped in newspaper.
生きたまま食べられるぐらいなら、私、今ここで死ぬ。
The ghouls would swarm around my corpse like a pride of lions after the first kill. That distraction would at least enable Kazuki to escape. I unwrapped the stainless steel knife from the newspaper with trembling hands, but at the sight of the shining blade my mind froze with dread. If I stab my neck with this, will I die instantly? I bet it's gonna hurt. Oh god, I don't want it to hurt! But as my hands continued their relentless, terrified trembling, Kazuki knelt down beside me and gently wrapped them in her own.
その役目は私がやるわ。私がおとりになると言っているのよ。でも
Before I knew it, Kazuki had smoothly taken the knife from my hand.
どうしてカズキが
I was the one who couldn't move. I was the one who'd given up. Why should Kazuki be the one to do this? For my sake. It made no sense.
いい、アマネ。よく聞いてちょうだい。
Holding the knife in an underhanded grip, Kazuki lowered her rucksack from her back and pressed it against my chest.
この中に隠しておいた食料と塩が入っているわ。ペース配分を考えてちゃんと計算して消費するのよ。カズキ、
You've kept food from us?
あなたに預けておいたチョコレートとキャンディーも全部あなたが食べていいわ。それとこれ。
She saved all that food we got, in case probably something like this were to happen. Kazuki reached into the pocket of her skirt and took out a few sheets of paper from a memo pad.
ここに生きて山を脱出するための方法をメモしておいたから、これをしっかりと読んで諦めずに進みなさい。やだ、カズキ、嘘でしょ。どうして私を見捨てるの？大丈夫よ、私は死なないわ。いつか必ずまた会えるからね。本当？あら、私が今まであなたに嘘をついたことがある？あるんでしょ？発覚していない嘘と真実との違いを述べよ。配点10点。冗談を言ってる場合、カズキが一人で逃げてよ。私はもう疲れちゃったよ。いいから行きなさい。私を誰だと思っているの？私に従っていれば何も心配はないわ。カズキ、絶対に振り返ってはダメよ。ほら、急いで走りなさい。
They say that a person's true nature is revealed only when their back's against the wall. I abandoned Kazuki to save my own skin. Leaving her as a decoy, leaving her to be eaten, I moved my legs furiously, desperate to gain every centimeter of safety I could. There was no doubt in my mind that she would die. She would die slowly, in agony, eaten alive by demons in human form. Kazuki would be the sacrifice, and one cowardly, worthless girl would survive a little bit longer. I was overflowing with guilt. Bitter tears of shame rolled endlessly down my face. Even if I got away, even if I returned alive, this unbearable self-loathing would crush me under its weight. With every step I took, that conviction grew stronger. My legs were leaden underneath me. You absolutely mustn't turn back. She had told me clearly enough, but just once. At the end I stopped. I looked back. The demons had gathered, the beams from their flashlights dancing through the trees, and at the center of their circle, Kazuki was lying on the ground, pinned down by the ghouls that had been our friends. The last time I saw her face, Kazuki wasn't crying, she wasn't screaming, she wasn't glaring resentfully, she was smiling. She smiled as if to say this was fate, as if to say this was the rule, as if to say it was nothing worth troubling myself over. If Kazuki had screamed for help, if she cursed me, called me a traitor, I might never have moved from that spot. I might have run back and fought. But Kazuki's quietly peaceful gazed into my eyes, accepting her fate. Her words flooded into my mind. Amane, listen to me. The creatures in this forest are no longer human beings, they're animals. The lion kills the zebra and consumes its flesh. It's only natural. The zebra isn't outraged that the lion would do such a thing, nor does it weep. The strong eat the weak when they find them, in order to survive. That's the rule. I stopped looking back. I turned my back on her for the last time and I ran, chanting "Forgive me" in my mind like a mantra. As the sky grew light with the dawn, I ran desperately, not knowing where my feet were carrying me. I simply fled, pushing through the forest in a frenzy, as if to escape my own terror and guilt. How many days had passed since then? I didn't exactly have the leisure time or composure to write a daily entry in my diary, but I think it had been 5 nights. 5 nights spent relentlessly, mindlessly marching forward through the jungle. Following the instruction Kazuki had written in her note, I walked only by darkness, in order to hide my movements from the ghouls. When the sun rose, I hid myself in bushes and tried to sleep. This lasted a few hours at most, and when I woke from those brief periods of rest, the first order of business was always to peel off the leeches that covered my body. Then throw the flat bloodsuckers into my mouth, crush them with my teeth, and force them down my throat. Kazuki's rucksack contained a small hoard of various snacks and sweets, her secret treasure. Just as I thought, she'd stolen the food from Ozawa's belongings on the very first day, then carefully stashed it away. Since escaping, I hadn't touched those precious snacks, not even once. If Kazuki were to somehow escape her captors and catch up with me, I intended to give it all back to her. There was real food just inside that bag. The temptation was overwhelmingly powerful. But if I were to yield to my hunger and greedily devour Kazuki's treasure, I'd be admitting I was fundamentally no different from the ravenous ghouls. I couldn't bring myself to do it. When the forest was dry enough to light a fire, I boiled fern sprouts and chrysanthemums for my meals. My starvation and exhaustion were now complemented by constant terror of the demons that were no doubt pursuing me. My hair had begun to fall out in bunches. I, too, had been pushed well beyond my limit, and I was about ready to break. Even so, Kazuki had saved my life. I couldn't allow that to become meaningless. I couldn't just give up. During the daylight hours, I simply laid still and hidden in the bushes, unable to sleep but preserving my energy as best I could. When the day grew dark, I would crawl cautiously out of the undergrowth, then begin the astronomical observation described in Kazuki's notes. The lush canopy of trees above hid much of the sky, rendering it difficult to determine the location of the stars, and as in any forest, the orienteering line of horizon was unclear. I might well have been able to get a better view by climbing one of the taller trees, but I no longer had the strength to do any such thing. Just how far had I walked? Walking meant pushing my way through the lush weeds and wild grasses, struggling through thick bushes that obstructed my path. The distance I moved in any given day didn't amount to much. After one full night's work of hiking through the jungle, I turned back to see if I could get some idea of progress, only to find the ridge I'd been standing on last night was still visible. I could feel my willpower shriveling inside of me. Deciding I could urge myself no farther that day, I collapsed on the spot, hugging Kazuki's rucksack tightly to my body. Her scent had permeated the tough fabric, and when I slept, she appeared in my dreams. In those dreams, Kazuki said nothing. She stood some 20 paces ahead, silently looking over her shoulder, staring into my eyes. I screamed her name and tried to step forward, but it was frustratingly difficult to move. I shoved my way through thick weeds, my feet sinking into thick mud with every step, ignoring the branches cutting at my cheeks, but no matter how desperately I forced myself forward, Kazuki moved away at the same speed. I couldn't catch up with her no matter how I tried. When I gave up and sagged to a halt, Kazuki stopped as well. Again, she gazed back into my eyes. "What on earth are you doing all the way back there?" She never spoke, but her expression conveyed the words clearly enough.
Kazuki.
I woke at the sound of my own sleep talking. I was no longer dreaming of food these last few days. I'd come to realize what I wanted more than anything else in the world was no longer food or drink. It was Kazami Kazuki. And once again I walked through the night. As I dragged my heavy legs forward, exhausted and starving, Kazuki came into view a little ways away. She strode slowly ahead through the dark forest, her back turned to me.
待ってよ、カズキ。
And as I pursued her, I could see many others further beyond. Vaguely defined figures walked the same path as Kazuki, flickering and melting into each other. All wore a familiar school uniform. Even in the darkness, I knew them. That one had to be Haruka. Further on, I could see Sakurai. Many others as well. Shikanai, Ozawa, Okabe, Alion, frolicking all around Komori's feet. The ones who had already died walking amongst the trees, shimmering hazily in the night. They looked over their shoulders one by one and spoke this way, and I finally started hallucinating. Guess I'll just be following them now, have them guide me to heaven. No, will it really be heaven? Well, I've been in hell until now. If they're taking me somewhere else, it's probably heaven, right?
みんな、待って。私、うまく歩けないよ。置いていかないで。ねえ、みんな。
I could no longer lift my legs. The world grew cloudy before my eyes. A heavy leaden drowsiness assaulted my mind. Even where I was, what was I doing? Had begun to grow fuzzy. With that thought, I guess this is as far as I go. I fell hard on my knees, then pitched forward onto the cold earth.
もう、ダメだ。情けない。私、天国にも行けずに、このままこんな中途半端な場所で死ぬんだ。
As I pressed my face into the ground, my ears began to ring. A fairly common phenomenon before passing out. It's something like the sound of your own baseline brainwaves. Faint here, and the leeches are going to be all over me again. But as the thought rang vaguely through my wobbling head, my ears picked up a noise clearly distinct from the high-pitched noise. What's that sound? I focused my mind on that strange noise and decided it sounded almost like a car running on an unpaved road, specifically the sound of tires rolling through gravel. And mixed in with that crunching white noise, there was something like a weak whining of a 3-cylinder engine. Ah, sounds like a mini-truck. Heaven sent somebody out to greet me? Are angels these days in the habit of picking up the dead in cute little pickups?
なあ、ほな。
When the sound passed, the ringing in my ears was gone as well. Once more I pulled my ragged body off the ground. Once more I forced myself upright, my weary legs trembling with the effort. I hadn't realized during the night, but apparently at some point I'd drawn near a road. A real honest-to-God road. A path human beings traveled. Beyond the thick rows of trees, through the wet, cold down air of the forest, I could see the gravelly track stretched out below. This isn't an hallucination, right? Incredulous as I was, I didn't take the time to pinch my cheeks. Half sidling down the muddy slope, I made my way toward the road that lay before me.
嘘。本当に。
It wasn't paved, it wasn't well maintained, but without a doubt it was a road serviced by human hands, traveled by human vehicles. My mind whirling, I began to walk unsteadily down the road in the direction I thought the truck had been headed. And before long, I found myself in front of a vast field, extending as far as the eye could see. It was full of thousands and thousands of cabbages. I didn't scream with joy at the sight. Without a word, I drew a few slow, shuddering breaths, then plunged into the field. Ripping the nearby cabbage off the ground, I sunk my teeth into it ferociously. In a frenzy, not bothering the chew, I ate. My first thought wasn't, I'm saved. It wasn't, I can finally go home. There was only one thing in my mind, eating the cabbages in front of me. Without a drop of season or even a sprinkle of salt. Those cabbages were so delicious my eyes rolled back into my head from sheer ecstasy. I ate and ate, deliriously, frantically, as if possessed. Cackling madly, I ate, laughing in between the spasmodic whispers that seized my throat. Tears pouring down my face, I ate. It was 30 minutes before the farmer's housewife noticed some single-mindedly ripping through the cabbage field like a crazed wild animal. When she ran to tell her husband about the bizarre creature devouring the crops, he ran out with his hunting rifle, only to find a human being. It was another 30 minutes before the ambulance he called arrived. And lying in my hospital bed, I finally told the local police officers who I was, that I'd been on a bus that had gone missing nearly 3 weeks before. And so, at the cost of so many terrible sacrifices, one pathetic girl crawled her way back to the human world alive. This is one hell of a story. And I think the story, obviously, the story isn't fictional due to the game, but it really kind of accentuates the human spirit and how it can devolve into just basic animal instincts that no matter who you are or where you came from, you can devolve into something less than human, that anyone can be consumed by madness. So I think the story did a very good thing pointing something like that out. And with that, I think I'm going to end the episode off here. We're finally back in school. The story of Amane's past is over, but it is very extreme nonetheless, so I don't know how Yuji is going to react or what he's going to do, but we're going to find out next time, alright? So, see you guys tomorrow on more of the Fruit of Grisaia, and have a nice day.